In the winter of 2009, a dispatcher received a call at 11:47 p.m. The caller was silent for 9 seconds. Then a woman's voice said she needed someone to check on her neighbor. She said the porch light had been on for 3 days. She said that wasn't normal. The dispatcher asked if she had seen anyone come or go. She said no. She said the car was still in the driveway. A patrol unit was sent to the address. It was a single-story home in a residential area. The officer noted the porch light was on. He knocked on the front door. No answer. He checked the windows. The blinds were drawn. He walked around to the back. The back door was unlocked. He announced himself and entered. The kitchen was clean. There were 2 plates in the sink. Both had been rinsed. A coffee maker was still on. The pot was empty, and the heating element had burned a dark ring into the glass. The officer turned it off. He noted the time. It was 12:15 a.m. The officer continued through the house. In the living room, the television was on. The volume was muted. A blanket was folded neatly on the couch. A pair of reading glasses sat on the armrest. A book was on the coffee table. The bookmark was placed halfway through. He found the bedroom door closed. He knocked. No response. He knocked again and announced himself. Still nothing. He opened it slowly. A woman was lying in bed. She appeared to be asleep. The officer called her name. She did not respond. He approached and reached out to touch her shoulder. Her skin was cold. He stepped back and realized she had been deceased for at least 2 days. There were no signs of trauma. The room was orderly. Her hands were folded on her chest. The covers were pulled up neatly to her waist. The medical examiner arrived at 1:30 a.m. Preliminary findings indicated natural causes. She was 63 years old. She lived alone. Her name was Margaret Holt. She had no known medical conditions that would have predicted sudden death. The examiner noted her positioning and the state of the room. Everything suggested she had gone to bed normally. During the investigation, officers searched the home for next-of-kin information. They found no emergency contact list, no photos on the walls, no address book by the phone. In a drawer in the kitchen, they found a notepad. On the top page, someone had written a phone number. Beneath it, in the same handwriting, were the words, "Called back. Said wrong number." The number was local. An officer dialed it. It rang 4 times. A man answered. The officer identified himself and asked if he knew Margaret Holt. The man paused. Then he said he didn't recognize the name. The officer asked if he had received any calls from this address in recent weeks. The man said he didn't think so. The officer thanked him and hung up. He made a note of the conversation. In the bedroom, they found a calendar on the nightstand. Margaret had marked several dates over the previous month. Most were routine, doctor's appointments, grocery reminders, a notation for trash day. But on one date, 2 weeks before she died, she had written, "Saw him again." Nothing else. No name, no context, no follow-up on any subsequent date. The officers checked the rest of the calendar. 3 days before her death, she had written, "Call about the noise." There was no indication she had made the call, no record of it in her phone log. Investigators spoke to the neighbor who had called it in. Her name was Ada Price. She lived directly next door. She said Margaret kept to herself but was polite. She said they waved to each other most mornings. Ada said the last time she saw Margaret was 4 days earlier. Margaret had been standing in her driveway, just standing there, staring toward the street. Ada asked if everything was all right. Margaret smiled and said she was just getting some air. Ada said that Margaret looked tired. She asked if Margaret needed anything. Margaret said no. Then she went inside. Ada said she watched her go. She said Margaret turned around once before closing the door, just looked back at the street. Then she went in. Another neighbor, a man who lived across the street, told police he had seen someone at Margaret's house the night before she was found. He said it was around 9 p.m. He was taking out his trash. He saw a figure standing on Margaret's porch. The porch light was on. He couldn't make out any details. He said the person was just standing there, facing the door. He assumed it was a friend or relative. He went back inside. When asked if he saw the person leave, he said no. He said he went to bed around 10:30 and didn't look out again. He said he didn't think about it again until the police came. The officer asked if the figure had knocked on the door. The man said he didn't know. He said he only saw them for a few seconds. He said they were wearing dark clothing. He couldn't say if it was a man or a woman. Police checked Margaret's phone records. In the week before her death, she had received 7 calls from the same unlisted number. Each call lasted less than a minute. The number could not be traced. It was no longer in service. The carrier had no record of who it had been registered to. Margaret had not called anyone in the 3 days before she died. Her last outgoing call had been to a pharmacy. The pharmacist confirmed she had picked up a prescription that afternoon. Blood pressure medication. Everything appeared routine. A search of Margaret's financial records showed nothing unusual. Her bills were paid on time. She had a modest savings account. Her last purchase had been at a grocery store 2 days before she was found. The receipt was still on the kitchen counter. Milk, bread, soup, tea. The items were all in the refrigerator or the cupboard. Nothing suggested she had been expecting company. Before we continue, there are stories that don't make the evening news. Incidents that get filed away. Details that never quite add up. If you're drawn to the unexplained, the unresolved, the quietly disturbing, then this is where you belong. Unspoken After Midnight brings you true events told exactly as they happened. No dramatization, no answers, just the facts that were left behind. New stories arrive every week. If this is the kind of truth you're looking for, subscribe now, because some things don't need to be loud to be unforgettable, and some questions were never meant to be answered. Now back to Margaret Holt. The toxicology report came back weeks later. No alcohol, no drugs, no poisons, no substances that would explain her death. Cause of death was listed as cardiac arrest, natural causes. The coroner signed off on the report. The case was closed, but certain details remained in the file. The coffee pot that had been left on, the 2 plates in the sink, the note about the wrong number, the calendar entry, the figure on the porch, the 7 untraceable calls, the notation about the noise. Detectives made one more attempt to locate family. They contacted the post office. They checked property records going back 15 years. They found that Margaret had bought the house in 1998. She had lived there alone ever since. The previous owner had no memory of her. The realtor who sold her the house had retired. They checked her employment history. She had worked at a library until she retired in 2006. Her former supervisor remembered her as quiet and dependable. She said Margaret never talked about her personal life. She said she didn't know if Margaret had family. She said Margaret ate lunch alone. She said she seemed content that way. No one came forward to claim Margaret's belongings. No family was ever located. No friends, no distant relatives. Her house was eventually sold by the county. The proceeds went to the state. The new owners moved in 6 months later. A young couple. They said the house was in good condition. They said it felt like someone had just stepped out. The furniture was still there. The dishes were still in the cupboards. Everything had been left behind. They said that sometimes in the evening the porch light would turn on by itself. They thought it was a timer at first. But there was no timer. They had an electrician look at it. He found nothing wrong with the wiring. He checked the switch. He checked the breaker. Everything was functioning normally. They replaced the fixture. It still happened. Always around 9 p.m. Always for a few hours. Then it would go off on its own. They stopped trying to explain it. After a few months, they stopped turning it off.